Greetings, YouTube. As anyone who's seen any of my book reviews in the past knows, I'm an avid reader. I've been reading since I was 5, which means I've been doing it for 40 years. And in that time, I've noticed a few things about my reading habits. When I read an author, I often pick up on the rhythm of their writing, the cadence to their speech, if you will. And if I read a lot of that author, and this was particularly true in the past when I read a lot of fiction, when I would devour an entire collection of an author, as I got that rhythm down pat, as I learned it, I could read that author more quickly, and I had greater comprehension of what they were writing. It's like the author and I were working in concert together, if you'll pardon the pun. But I have encountered, as a reader of nonfiction, that is less true. Sometimes I can really get into an author's cadence and things flow nicely, and even a large book can seem to fly right by. And the book I mentioned in my Alexander movie review, the biography of Alexander the Great and a discussion of his tactics, it was a big book, and yet it really moved well for me. I enjoyed reading it, and it didn't seem to take that long to just devour that book. It was a lot of fun. My latest book, however, I couldn't get the author's rhythm. I could not march to his cadence. The book in question is The Spartans, The World of the Warrior Heroes of Ancient Greece by Paul Cartledge. Now, this book is full of lots of good information about the Spartan culture, and in particular about some of the important figures in the Spartan culture, the most famous, of course, being Leonidas of 300 fame. And this book is really important to anyone who would like to get some nice background information on who the Spartans really were, have an understanding of their culture, some of the facts of the battle at Thermopylae that is made famous by Frank Miller's comic and the movie that was based on that comic. But reading this book, and it's not a very big book. I mean, I've read many books that were 5 times this size. Took me forever. I think it took me like 3 weeks to read this book, because every single page felt like I was climbing a mountain. The information was good. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I now have a good working knowledge of the Spartans in my head. And I'm going to be keeping this as a reference because it's got good notes and appendixes in the back and a good list of suggested reading for other texts. And again, it's kind of a very tightly focused book, and I happen to really like those. It's kind of a personal quirk. But by gosh, man, his writing style and my reading style just did not click. I don't know which of us is at fault here, but it was just painful. And I can't even say it was bad writing, because it wasn't. It's just that something about the way this man was conveying information to me just hurt. I think part of it might be there was this huge tidal wave of Greek names, and I'm trying desperately to pronounce them correctly in my head, because I know that like we don't, Hercules is not the way you say it. It's Hercules. All right, so I'm constantly trying to translate a lifetime of people pronouncing Greek words wrong, and I'm trying to pronounce them right in my head. So there was this kind of jarring stop every time I would hit a Greek name, and I'm like, okay, how is this name actually pronounced? And then again, of course, I'm also comparing the information I know about this against Greek culture that I already had information about. The era of the Iliad, and the area and Alexander's life, and how is this? And this book really falls in between those two time periods. The Iliad took place long before the Spartans were really known as this hard-ass race, and then Alexander took place in the aftermath of that culture that had fallen from power. Then, Helen of Troy was actually Helen of Sparta. It's important to remember that. She may have been made famous in Troy, but she was Spartan and married to a Spartan man. But there was stuff in here that I loved. The discussion of the agoge, the school that would take boys from their mothers at age 7 and then train them to become warriors, because being a warrior was the only job a Spartan male could have. And if you couldn't live up to that, if you couldn't meet your requirements in contribution to your mess, to the daily meal, to the group that you were voted in to be a member of, if you couldn't make those daily contributions, if you couldn't have your Penelope, the equipment that you needed to be a Spartan warrior, then you didn't get to be a Spartan citizen. You got demoted. So there were requirements. And remember that the Spartan culture was based on a solid foundation of slavery. They were not nice people. The Spartan people, the citizens themselves, the male warriors and their wives, didn't do any work in the conventional sense. They were the masters of slaves. And we tend to forget that. We look at how hard-ass they were, and they were great warriors, and the Battle of Thermopylae was an incredibly important battle, both in history and as an example of human endurance and human conviction. But they were slavers. And they weren't alone. There weren't just 300 Spartans at that battle, folks. There were thousands of Greeks at that battle. And many of the hundreds and hundreds of them stayed there with the Spartans on that last day and died. It wasn't just the Spartans. The Spartans were the largest cohesive group of 300 that were a honor guard, picked specifically for that battle because each had a son so that their lineage would be carried on. And they went there knowing they would die. It wasn't a walk in the park that just happened to be a battle. They went there with the knowledge that they were never coming back. So there is a lot to say about the Spartans that was good, and there's a lot to say about the Spartans that was bad. And there were things that I just found interesting. The way the Spartan men would always wear their hair long, and they would oil it, and they would braid it, and it was part of their culture to make themselves look good even on that last day. And yet Spartan women, on their wedding night, would shave their heads and wear their hair short for the rest of their lives as a symbol that they were married. And that in the Greek culture, it was symbolically the wedding night of a Greek woman was a rape. Except in the Spartan culture, sometimes it wasn't symbolic. It was a very complex culture, and this book really did a good job of conveying that. Maybe that's one of the reasons it was so hard to read, because there were so many juxtapositions going on from page to page. But I liked the book. It was, if you're into the Spartan culture or into Greek history, I recommend it, and maybe it will have an easier read for you than it was for me. But I definitely recommend anyone who likes that era to check it out.